All righty, that recording is in progress. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to our Brainwaves to Bottom Line webinar. After an absolutely packed house, standing room only in Sydney for this talk, we decided give the people more of what they want. So we are bringing Brainwaves to Bottom Line to all of you today, and to all of those who might be watching this recording afterwards as well. So my name is Ashton. I'm the general manager here at 22 Digital. I am joined by our incredible founder and managing director, Sarah Pelecanos. I'll let Sarah introduce herself in a moment, but I would just like to start with a quick acknowledgement of country. So Sarah and I are joining you today from beautiful Meanjin, home of the Yagara and Turrbal peoples, and we'd like to recognise their deep and ongoing connection to country. So along the way, if any of you have questions, please do pop them in the chat. I'll be moderating those at the end. There'll be plenty of time for Q&A. That's actually the reason why we're doing this. So we had so many people wanting to have a chat, wanting to ask questions off the back of Sarah's talk in Sydney. So the purpose of today is, yes, to hear from Sarah and all of these incredible insights on neuromarketing, but to actually give you guys the opportunity to ask some spicy neuromarketing questions and how this might be able to be applied to your business. So without further ado, Sarah, I'll let you take it away.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. As Ashton mentioned, I'm Sarah Pelecanos. I'm the founder of 22 Digital. Love the brain, love everything about it. It's squishy and weird and does so many amazing things for us. And also a digital marketing expert. Love all things marketing, been in the field for over a decade and can't get enough of it. So my passion is definitely marketing. If you get me in my spare time, I'm probably still doing that. So good introduction of myself. Still kind of finessing that little elevator pitch I have, but gives you a bit of an insight into who I am. So what we're going to be going over today is it's more of a condensed version. So the talk that I did in Sydney was 30 minutes and a lot of crowd work. Love a good stand-up comedy routine. But it was a really good opportunity to kind of gauge how neuromarketing is within the field, how people actually perceive it today, and also giving a bit of explainer for everyone as well. So in terms of what we'll be going over is a quick definition, 4 key theories that shape buying behaviors, which were covered in the presentation, a mock case study as well to explain those theories in practice, a brand that is absolutely nailing it in terms of applying these, and then how you can put it into play and Q&A time as well. So as Ashton mentioned, the main purpose of today is more so Q&A. So I'll try and keep everything within like a 15-20 minute crunch, but please ask questions throughout. That is definitely the purpose. I love a good question. If I can't answer it, I will get back to you on it. I definitely don't know everything, but I will hopefully be able to have a good go at being able to help inform you for your industries. So let's get started in what actually is neuromarketing. A quick definition for you. In terms of neuromarketing in the space, it is the application of neuroscience and psychology to marketing, using insights into how the brain processes information to better understand consumer behavior and decision making. How I like to separate this is more looking at how we as marketers today, we kind of look more at the subjective, right? So we're looking at the emotional response to marketing stimuli from our consumers, because they are things that we can measure based off of like sentiment, based off of feedback that we get, focus groups, surveys, etc. We have access to that data and we can make decisions based off of that. But neuromarketing takes that application and also looks at the objective side, which is how the brain actually works. So for my SEO fans in the crowd, if you're thinking of the brain in a way where it's similar to spiders when they're crawling your web page, your job in SEO is to remove as many barriers as possible, so that way spiders are able to crawl in the most efficient way and identify what is on your page to index you better, match it based off relevance, etc. Whereas neuromarketing is very similar as well. It's removing the barriers within visual or marketing stimuli to be able to get your brain to understand what's in front of it in the best way possible, and also for it to be able to retain that information. So it's looking at ways that it actually stores information, how it looks and understands information to be able to have it resonate in the way that you want it to. So looking at really the objective and subjective together, kind of like that art and science sort of approach. So now that we understand neuromarketing, hopefully, let's look at 4 brain quirks that shape buying behavior. So these are 4 key theories that I wanted to explore, and then kind of the perks, the benefits of them is that they kind of apply to every industry in some way, and they can work with B2B, they can work with B2C. So there's that capability of being able to kind of take this into your day-to-day strategies and apply it. So we have 4 key ones here. We have novelty detection, or von Restorff effect. So this is breaking a pattern, which makes something stand out and stick in your memory, which, I'm going to call it novelty detection because it's way easier to say. That's something that, random happens, or something that catches your attention and really gets your brain into or breaks the pattern of your brain in the thought process, where you're like, oh, okay, that happens. It can be fleeting is the only thing with this. So if something's shocking, it will stay in your brain, but it might not be retained in your brain. Versus the opposite of that is mere exposure effect. So the more we see or hear something, the more familiar and likable it feels. The purpose of this theory is that, you trust a brand more when you are exposed to it more frequently. However, then the opposite of that is actually habituation. So habituation is a concept where, I equate it to if you're driving to work or if you're driving to the gym, how when you get there and you're like, wow, did I even drive? Like, did that even happen? That is habituation in process, where your brain is not actually storing the information because it is predictable. So it filters it out because it's not considered valuable information to store in your brain. So when you have too much exposure, your brain starts going into habituation. And then if you were to shock your brain out of it, you might do novelty detection, i.e. if there's a clown on a unicycle on the side of the road, you're going to remember that on your drive, which might actually help you to remember other portions of the drive, but it may be fleeting as well, which is where, again, your exposure can come in. And then there's semantic satiation. This is one that I love because everyone has an example. When you were a kid and you said a word too many times, mine was the word cloth. To this day, I don't think it's a real word because I've said it so many times that it just did not sound real. Even spelling it spells weird. Like it's not a word. I'm adamant on that. But everyone has that, right? And so the purpose of this one is that if you use a call to action too many times, or if you're using the same call to action as your competitors, that word ends up losing value and meaning to your audience because it's no longer having the same effect that it should have because it has been said or read too many times. And it works in the same way of seeing it, spelling it, saying it. It can form semantic satiation. So all 4 of these weave into each other to be able to create a really nice process for you, which you can see on this nice little heat map. So we have the sweet spot, which is in the middle here, in between mere exposure and novelty detection, where you would want to have, enough sparks within your marketing that go, hey, like this is something interesting. This is making you have that double take at my marketing. Therefore, you're remembering, what my brand is. But we also have enough frequency and exposure of our ads that we've built trust. So the novelty, sparks the excitement, and the exposure builds the trust and familiarity. However, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. You eat all the cookies out the cookie jar, you're probably going to vomit. So if you do too much excitement in your face, like bada bing, bada boom, you're going to go into semantic satiation where that level of excitement actually becomes dull. So it's an overload and it dulls out those senses in regards to your brand and your visual identity. Exactly the same with mere exposure. If you're hitting too much frequency with your audience, you go into habituation where you then become invisible to them and they won't retain your visual identity or your copy. Which is also a good hint of stand out from your competitors because, if you guys have the same color scheme or brand guideline or anything like that, if there's too much similarity there, then what will happen is if they're exposed to your ads and their ads, you're more likely to go into that habituation semantic satiation state, which is even harder to break out of unless you do a complete rebrand. So making sure we hit that sweet spot and stay in there. So if we were to test it out, This was the trigger warning in there. I went through a whole bunch of different statements, which were like the classic things that we get asked from C-suite, right? Which are, and I mean, I'm C-suite, so I'm not asking these things, but I have definitely been on the other side of receiving them where, they might ask, can we make the logo 3 times bigger? Can we add more keywords in the text for search? Can we add more menu items? Can we add more images? Can we have the sale front and center? I want more pop-ups. I want this. I want that. Hit me with some of the ones in the comments if you want, of things that you're asked that absolutely should not be implemented. But basically, we took all of these common requests and we put it into one beautiful design to test. And the most common requests resulted in this beautiful design, which is just atrocious. It looks terrible and it's really in your face. And the point of this is to be able to be like, okay, if these requests keep happening, let's have a look at how the brain actually responds to this level of like boom in your face, pop-ups happening. We have content over here for search. We have images happening. We're adding too much to the website to be able to process it properly in our brains. But how do we actually prove that to people in higher up positions by saying, hey, actually, this is going to have a negative effect? So what you want to do is you want to support that with data. So as we know, our eyes knew that was horrible. What does the brain actually say? We took our brain measurement tech that we have, and I took the more simple graph out of this one because I believe it tells the story in the best way. However, we do have the capability to be able to see the different parts of the brain that are firing and the different results that can come from it. There are 6 key areas that we measured, though, in the purpose of this case study. We looked at attention, which is how focused the person is on a specific task or stimuli. Engagement, which relates to interest and mental effort. Excitement, which reflects short-term arousal or excitement. Interest, which is personal interest the brain is showing towards the stimulus. Relaxation, which is calmness. So the higher the relaxation, the calmer they are. And stress, which represents mental tension of workload. So based off of these results, what does this actually tell us? So attention is quite high, which means that it's keeping the attention of the person that has been assessed in this situation. Engagement is slightly below average, so they're somewhat engaged, but nothing exceptional. Excitement is significantly low, and it had a large dip when navigating through this web page. We set it up as a prototype as well, so that way we could see what was triggering these particular spikes. With it being at a level of 15, it means it's not actually the sales hype of it with all the pop-ups and the sale here, this here, blah, 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 is having an opposite effect with excitement significantly decreasing. Interest is below average, meaning that nothing is standing out because they've tried to make everything stand out, therefore nothing is at all. And relaxation and stress are both low and flat. So that means that they aren't relaxed, which could indicate stress, but it's not. So they're not relaxed, but they're also not stressed. So with this being low and flat with next to no actual increase or decrease throughout means that it's a dull cognitive load. So what we could do if we have this data is put it into a story for our reporting manager, for our C-suite, for our board, whoever we're talking to be able to communicate it in a way that's going to say, hey, actually, what you're asking for is going to have the opposite effect of what we're intending to achieve in marketing. And the result overall is apathy. So the biggest thing that you want to avoid in marketing is apathy, because having an apathetic approach to a brand, that means that there's zero care whatsoever. You're not even annoying them at that point. They are pretty much not happy with you or angry with you. They're just having zero response. And when we get that within our results, that means that we are going to struggle to be able to achieve even an angry or a happy response in future, because they've now kind of fallen into that semantic satiation or that habituation result where they're no longer actually processing or storing that information with us. They're apathetic to us. So don't do apathy. So let's look at a brand that nailed it. So looking at those results, we can see, yes, based off of what happened, we're having an apathetic approach. It's capturing attention, but it's not actually exciting. It's not having stress or relaxation. Nothing crazy is happening from that, right? But a brand that has actually nailed it in terms of how they've taken those theories and then applied it into their marketing has been The Iconic. The Got You Looking campaign that they have, I'm sure everyone's seen it around. It's not too much everywhere, but it is everywhere in the sense of I'm sure everyone's seen it. The reason why they've done really well here is because they've taken a surrealist approach. So for all my art geeks out there, you know, a Dali level where it's taking surrealism, where it's almost correct, but not quite. So, you know, you kind of take a double take because almost correct is that mere exposure where it's familiarity. For example, the pizza icon or the pizza image, everyone knows a pizza, everyone knows taking a slice of pizza. You know what that is in your head because you've seen that before. It's that mere exposure being ticked off, but then it's covered in jewels. So it makes you have that second look where you're like, well, actually, no, that's not 100% correct. Same with the one on the bottom far right with the shower with jewels. You know, everyone knows a shower, I hope. And then, you know, it's actually jewels coming out of it and it's kind of going onto the dress. So it's taking that double take with the creative where you're like, okay, you know, this is almost correct. So it's got my trust, but I'm having another look at it because it's not quite correct. So it's got that novelty effect to it as well. They're doing a really great job with this, and in particular, this campaign. So if we were to put this into play for yourself, you know, we have mere exposure, so the neuroscience insight versus the marketing action. If we were to achieve mere exposure, you would look at frequency caps across your advertising platforms. And, you know, that rule is, it's the old adage is rule of 7. Neil Patel says rule of 11. I would listen to Neil Patel over myself. So, but between somewhere of 7 and 11 times, someone should see a message for it to be able to really sink in and resonate with them. Frequency caps allow you to be able to achieve mere exposure without falling into habituation. And then to target habituation, you know, you would have that creative rotation. So when you are doing frequency caps for one set of creative, then you would do creative rotation of your ads over certain periods of time to be able to make sure, yes, that they got the message, but they're not receiving the message in the same way visually or with the same content. The way I put it in the presentation was that you should hit them with siblings, not twins. So your creative shouldn't be identical. It shouldn't sound identical, anything like that, but it should be a sibling. So it should be of the same family that it looks like it's part of it, but it's not exactly the same. Then to be able to achieve novelty detection, so that's the retargeting side of things. So if someone was to receive that first round of creatives or copy or however, then it's being able to say, okay, well, they're particularly interested in these streams over here. Let's now retarget them across these other channels with the sibling creative in a way that's going to kind of shock them back into that path. So for my brain geeks out there, you know, everyone I feel like is kind of across neuroplasticity and how that works. What you're wanting to do here is when people are following down that path of mere exposure where it's the trust and it's a path that already exists, so it's easy for them to go down that path, novelty detection kind of takes a detour for a quick second. So it breaks the path and it kind of shocks you out of whatever path you were on at that point in time. And then you come back into that path and keep going. So it's important because it will help keep the brand relevant in their head, but it's too much of it will eventually just take them off the path and they won't come back onto it. Semantic satiation, so that is combated with copy refresh. That's very, very, very important. And to everyone who loves AI out there, which I am an AI enthusiast, love AI to pieces. However, if you are in a particular industry that has competitors, i.e., every industry ever, and you're using AI for your copywriting and for your, you know, creative campaign for everything, and you have a brief of your target audience and you're putting in that prompt and it's detailed as hell, if your competitors are doing the same thing, because it's a mathematical equation, you're going to get similar results. And if you get those similar results and you both push to market, you're more likely to fall into semantic satiation or habituation. You need things that are going to stand out above, you know, AI slop, for better use of words. And AI is extremely valuable in the sense where it can help automate a lot of things. It can definitely help be a sounding board, brainstorming tool, things like that. But if you're using it for sole creation and execution purposes, you're most likely going to fall within those not sweet spots of the heat map, and it will be harder to break out of. So if we were to put this into play for yourself, one, don't be a yes man. Ongoing requests from higher ups can create reactive marketing decisions, which ultimately lead to apathy. We want to avoid apathy at all costs. You fall into apathy, it's 10 times harder to get out of it than it was to get into it. The rule of 7, as I mentioned before, rule of 11, 7 to 11. That's fine. Spacing is more important than frequency. So distributed repetition that's set up with intention trumps bombarding and over frequent comms. You want to make sure that they're receiving their 11 times message over a certain period of time of the campaign rather than bombarding all up front. Because if you do it at the forefront, so if I was to receive it all within 1 week, I'm more likely to fall into that state of habituation where it's no longer registering because it's annoying. Vary your creatives, very, very important. Slight changes in advertising does prevent that habituation pathway and also helps maintain near exposure. You really want to make sure that you're getting that double take on your ads. So having someone look at it, because you register it when you're looking at an ad. There's so many times that, you probably would have been on your phone, you look at something, you scroll past it because you're kind of in that doom scroll, but then you scroll back, right? Because you're like, oh, hang on a second, what was that? You want to achieve that with your advertising, and to be able to do that needs creative thinking and strategy and execution. But also remember that novelty isn't everything. So while you can get the double take, just remember to do controlled frequency that builds trust. You don't want to hit people with a shock every time, because eventually the shock will dull. It's like if I, kept pinching you on the arm every day, every minute of every day, eventually your nerves will lose sensation there. I might get in trouble for it, but your nerves will have a reaction to it where it's actually desensitizing to that particular action. Same with your brain. Well, I imagine that's what happens with pinching. I'm not 100% sure, but your brain will desensitize to the shock value, where it will no longer have that same effect, particularly from a visual standpoint. So you want to make sure that you're not always going novelty. You're just varying it up with your creatives. Oh, and that is the very short, brief version of the presentation. So I want to now hear from you guys.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. We do have some questions. Are you ready? Excited? Good. I'm gonna hit you with them. The first one, I've actually got a question. I'm going to sub one in as well. For people who don't have the fancy headset and all the gear that we had to measure that brain impact from our beautiful mock-up case study, what are some platforms or tools that people can use to start monitoring these kinds of behaviors?
Yeah, so starting to monitor, sorry, rephrase that. So they're starting to monitor like how people,
How people are responding
yeah.
to your website potentially.
Yeah, so it comes from a good understanding of the quantitative and qualitative, right? So I always like to use the quantitative as my compass, and the qualitative is like my destination almost. So, or maybe more so my map. So quantitative will say, for example, if my bounce rate is super high on a particular page, it'll say that there's something happening on that page that I need to investigate further. And then you might go onto that page and notice that, maybe the header was broken or something abnormal is sticking out, or it's making people really dislike that page and it's not achieving what I want it to achieve. That's when I would then look at potentially, it depends how deep you want to go. If I was to stay on the quantitative side, I might look at tools like Hotjar, which are really great for being able to see page navigation and screen recordings and things like that. You can assess rage clicks, all of those. Hotjar mentioned. You can assess all of those different metrics that they have available, which is very, very helpful. And you can also have the little survey at the bottom, which has like the little emoji faces of how they feel. However, if you were then to take it beyond that, if you wanted to look at maybe more of a qualitative assessment, Qual is great in like focus group style. So you might take your target audience. If you have your defined target audiences, say you have 5, you might take a sample from each target audience and bring those people in, and then you can assess them based off of they in an isolated environment, unbiased. You can just talk them through that process and get their emotional feedback based off of it. You don't necessarily need the brain tech to be able to do all of this. It's just understanding the different theories and being able to put them into practice. So I hope that answers.
Awesome. Thank you. I've got an interesting one here. So, is a bad response to stimuli potentially a good response? So, the example that we gave was an apathetic response. So, it's like they're not feeling great, they're not feeling bad, they're not feeling anything. Is a negative response, high stress potentially, is that potentially a good thing in breaking the habituation, semantic satiation kind of pathway in the brain?
Yes, but with quotations around that. So
Yes, yes, but.
yes, but so you wouldn't want, for example, your web page to cause stress, because then people aren't going to be able to navigate it in the way that you want. But your advertising, if that causes stress, that may actually be a result that you want. For example, if you have a first aid client and you're showing something that is maybe distressing for someone, i.e., if it's choking, or if it's needing CPR or something, that can be a stressful reaction for someone to be able to see it, where that emotional response is actually quite valuable, because you know that you're hitting the nerve that you're wanting to hit to be able to get the outcome that you want. Versus a web page, which is designed for a purpose of navigation and then end goal. If that is causing stress, that's actually a bad thing, because much like the spiders that I mentioned earlier, you're adding barriers into their path to be able to process the information. Context dependent.
Context. Yeah. Thank you. Another question here. So, do you have any tips around tracking frequency or impressions cross-channel to ensure we're not bombarding or potentially not even hitting our frequency caps? So when we talk about people needing to see your message that kind of ideal 7 to 11 times, how do we track that across the different platforms where they might be seeing that to get that holistic view?
Such a good question. And unfortunately, there's no platform that I've identified to this day that allows for that capability of cross channel measurement in a way that's easy. Because each channel processes data, or the metrics that it gives you is all different, right? Like we have meta. So let's talk Facebook, for example. Facebook, impressions, reach, frequency score, things like that. Whereas Google, no reach, just impressions. So there's different metrics on every channel, and you want to make sure that you're using the same metric to measure what you're intending to do. So for example, if I was to and I'm just going to keep it nice and simple with the 2 channels right now, but if I was to assess Google versus Facebook, I would care about impressions, because I know that those 2 metrics relate to each other. And I actually have a spreadsheet of like all the metrics across every channel and the ones that actually map to each other, so that which ones can actually talk the same language, essentially. But like I would take impressions, and then I actually don't know if Google measures frequency. I can't remember off the top of my head, but most likely, let's assume it does. So let's say frequency is measured on Google and frequency is measured on Facebook. I know it is on Facebook. So that's something that I care about, right? So I want to bring that across as well. So what you would do is you would understand, if I'm targeting the same people across Facebook and Google, and they're both receiving frequency of 8 in 7 days or something like that, right? Which no one should have it that high, but they're likely getting quite high exposure, in which case they're going to fall into that habituation point there. So unfortunately, there is no really easy way to measure it at this stage without building your own custom platform, which I have done and we can do. Just a little plug there. But yeah, otherwise what I would do is I would look at all the channels, identify every channel, identify the metrics that go across channel, and then assess it maybe like on a week or monthly basis. So that way you can say, okay, like we know that frequency is quite high on this channel, but not on this channel. Are we at risk of running into XYZ?
Mm.
No easy way, unfortunately.
No golden platform just yet. If anyone knows of one, that would be great. Those pesky privacy APIs kind of prohibit us from too much tracking in this. I thought we were supposed to be in a cookieless future, but everyone's still asking for cookies, so we don't. Who knows what's happening in the cookie jar? Who knows?
As long as they're gluten-free, that's all.
As long as they're gluten-free. A couple more questions here for you, Sarah. So, any recommendations on how often we should look at refreshing ad creative, especially when certain platforms freak out when you touch them too much? So, we know, for example, that Meta has its learning phase that you set something live and you don't want to touch it for about 7 days. So every platform is a little bit different there as well. Do you have any insights or recommendations around how often or when we should be looking to do that creative refresh, when that creative fatigue kind of sets in?
Absolutely. So, again, context dependent. It would depend on the size of the campaign. I.e., if I had like a minuscule budget and it was only running for a quarter, I actually wouldn't do a creative rotation. Because if you are to do a creative rotation in a 3-month period with a tiny budget, you're going to send it back into learning, and it's just not actually worth it based off of the outcome. If I have a massive budget, it's running for a year. And also, sorry, backtrack. Most of the channels that we're advertising on offer that dynamic or responsive advertising, right? Where you can put in multiple images, multiple content variations, things like that. So it already offers creative rotation, which is great because it's making sure that we're getting different creative, different content, and it finds the best possible variant that's going to achieve the goal that we've set for it. So in that instance, I would then look at which variants are performing the highest. And if they're following a particular theme, then I would create different siblings based off of those themes or those variants that are performing really high. And then I would add them in, but still keep the high performer as well. But I would do that maybe every 3 months, 2 or 3 months.
Siblings, not twins.
Siblings, not twins.
We want a creative family. That's what we're
Yeah.
aiming for. And the last one from the folks who have tuned in live today, thank you for everyone who has joined us. For a business who's starting out and deciding which platform should I be on, there's so many out there. How should they go about selecting which platforms and how many they should be on to kind of reach that ideal 7 to 11 touch points?
Yeah, really good question again. So every question is so context dependent in marketing, right?
A marketer's favorite answer. It
Yeah,
depends.
it depends. So, but it truly does, right? Like, you need to have first identified who your target audiences are. 3 to 5 personas tops. 5 tops, that's a lot, but 3 to 5. And then you need to identify where they're spending most of their time. You absolutely should not be across all channels because then you're putting resources into channels that don't actually need it and aren't actually moving the wheel. And yourself, once I heard a great person say that we should invest in the we should invest in the highest impact channels and then test in the lower impact. So, and it's to test it. Ashton said that. It's to test if those other ones are worth investing into at some point. But then the high impact ones are the ones where we actually want resource time allocated to. And you should be able to identify that based off of your target audiences themselves. That data is readily available for everyone as long as you know who those people are. You can find that on like ABS, you can find that IBIS reports, you can find it in so many different areas. Like Meltwater does a study every year, so Sprouts, like from a socials perspective, really easy to get that information.
Awesome. And a lucky last question here. Do any of these principles differ when it comes to organic or branding? So we are talking, we have been talking a lot about, I guess, your website, but advertising. We have been talking a lot about advertising. Is this the same when it comes to organic marketing or that top of funnel
Yeah.
content?
Yes, but it varies. So when it comes to organic marketing, because the people that will see your organic socials, I'm going to pick on Instagram and Facebook, so Meta for this time being, because no one really posts anywhere else other than that. TikTok, Reddit, maybe Pinterest just a little bit. Anyway, so LinkedIn, actually everyone posts everywhere. Never mind. But
Let's pick on Meta.
let's pick
They can take it. It's fine.
yeah, we'll pick on Meta. So Meta, their feed distribution, as we know, doesn't rely on time. It refers to relevancy of the content to the person's historical interests, page likes, friends, whatever, you know. So and also whether they follow your page too. So them or your content showing up within that feed of that person, the frequency is very different. But what I would treat it as when doing it organically, I would treat it as very much doing all siblings only, no twins. But your organic content is not the same as advertising because it's not often asking people to perform an action. So you can have a very different response because it's often trying to either educate, inform, entertain, those type of things. So I would actually take a different approach in organic where I don't think frequency is a problem in terms of posting. But you want to make sure that you're divvying up the frequency of the pillars. So if you have your content pillars, for example, I wouldn't do all education because then people will only associate your brain with educational content that may or may not have piqued their interest at that given point in time. If they've fallen into habituation with your content and it only sticks in that one pillar, that you've lost them, you know. So you want to make sure that you're also having an entertainment pillar, maybe an inform pillar, ones that kind of put them in different paths within their brain. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great feedback. Thank you, Sarah. That's about all we have for the questions. So I think we will wrap it up there. I will just say thank you to everyone for joining us and hello to the future for anyone who's watching this recording after we end this session today. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please do reach out to myself or Sarah directly. We love talking about marketing. We can talk about this till the cows come home, especially when it comes to neuroscience. But Sarah, I'll hand over to you for a final word.
Uh, hope
The
you guys
the
have
final word is cloth.
the final word. That's not a word, as we all know. So it's not cloth. But I hope you guys all have a great day. And thank you again for jumping on. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do. I love the brain. It's wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Love your brains. Bye.